Lieutenant Holle reports back from vacation after treatment. I stood in front of my battalion commander, Major Zimmerman. My God! Holle, the heavens themselves sent you to me. I looked questioningly at the Major's lean, elongated face. Yes, I will tell you now, he continued, that we have lost all of our company commanders in the last few days. Your predecessor, Oberleutnant Mennert, Lieutenant Janke of the 5th Company during the attack in the southern part of Stalingrad, lost his right arm, a sad story. And the 8th Company is commanded for the time being by Oberfeldfebel Jacobs. Now I will at least have you and my adjutant, Lieutenant Schuler. This tall, thin man, who was old enough to be my father, sat slouched on a wooden crate and looked at me gravely. The flame of the candle was reflected in the lenses of the Major's glasses. We're expecting replacements any day now for the people we've asked for urgently. Probably the replenishment is on its way. On July 8th, we left our winter positions in the area of the Seversky Donets River near Nirkovo to take part in the summer offensive. The attack on the position where you were wounded in April cost us heavy losses from the beginning. Lieutenant Riedel, commander of the 5th Company, was killed and was replaced by Lieutenant Janke. Lieutenant Marder of the 6th Company was wounded and was replaced by Lieutenant Kramer. We passed through Voroshilovgrad and were advancing mainly in a southeastern direction, towards the Caucasus. After crossing the Don, we continued through the Kalmyk steppes, strictly to the southeast. In the lowlands near Katishchev, we encountered fierce resistance. After we broke it, we received an order to shift to the left and move northeast to Stalingrad. On the southern outskirts of the city, we again had to overcome stubborn enemy resistance. And now we were stuck here in these street battles. I looked around carefully. Since I did not know the city, the battalion messenger met me toward evening somewhere in the southern suburbs. He escorted me to this 3-story stone structure and led me to the battalion CP through a maze of basement passageways. I was now in a bare, windowless basement room that smelled damp and musty. I had been told that only a few weeks ago this had been a women's prison. Now tell us what happened to you after you were wounded in Nirkovo. It will only require a few short sentences, Herr Major. After the operation in Bad Schwalbach, where I had a bullet removed from my right shoulder, the hospital granted me a leave of absence on the occasion of my marriage. We were married on June 20th of this year. Then my leave ended, and I had to go to the 173rd Ersatz Battalion in the town of Naumburg on the River Saale. There I met several co-workers from our division, including my present commander Hauptmann Scholz, my former company commander Oberleutnant Förster, Lieutenants Malitz and Schriebel from our battalion, and several officers from other regiments. Lit Malitz offered me to become a tank fighter instructor, but I declined the offer because I wanted to return to the front to my comrades. I was then given an additional leave of absence until I received my assignment. On August 20th, I was again in Naumburg, where I received orders to go to the 134th Infantry Division, deployed on the central section of the front, near Orel. Although the commanding officers and soldiers greeted me in a friendly manner, I was not satisfied. My old comrades were not there. Here in the battalion I knew almost everyone. I felt like a fish thrown ashore. The fact that I was assigned as an infantry guard officer to the commander of the ex-Kiszczek Tank Corps, General of Armoured Forces Harp, did not change anything. Under the pretext that I was still bothered by my past wound, when a bullet hit my lung, I asked General Garp to send me home to finish my treatment. Here are the dispatch orders. The journey to my home unit took me exactly 8 days. The Major muttered, "So it was all just a ruse?" "Yes, Herr Major." "You don't have to worry about that anymore. The regiment will take care of the necessary paperwork." "Thank you, Herr Major. You can spend the night at the CP, and tomorrow you will receive your 7th Company. Lieutenant Schuler will go with you. He is going to the front line to see if everything is in order there. Schuler will bring you up to date on the current situation at the front. And how are things at home? How are your wife and parents?" "That's fine, Mr. Major. Everyone is happy and satisfied, especially that I recovered quickly from my wound. Everyone spoiled me for 8 weeks of vacation. I'm very happy for you, Holly. Who knows how long you'll have to wait before you get a vacation home again. Here's Lieutenant Schuler. I turned around and saw the familiar face of my friend Joachim Schuler. He, too, recognized me immediately. His face shone with joy. "Oh, Albert, it's great to have you back. You came straight from home." We grabbed each other's hands, looked at each other and hugged. "No, Jochen, I came directly from the Eagle area, from the Central Front. The commander will tell you the rest. How is it at the front?" His eyes immediately became serious. "The front line is quiet at present, but we are in desperate need of replenishment as the last few weeks have been hard on men and horses. Since the beginning of the offensive at Nirkovo, after the winter break, we have suffered considerable losses. Helmut Riedel was killed, Franz Marder was wounded, and Siegfried Pönich's horse stepped on a mine, killing both the horse and himself. Already here, opposite the southern part of Stalingrad, your predecessor in the 7th Company, Oberleutnant Menert, was wounded. Hans Janke, who took over the 5th Company after the death of your friend Riedel, lost his right arm. As for the soldiers, things are no better. Many of the old fighters have been killed or wounded. It is high time for us to get some reinforcements. Despite the pleasant feelings of seeing my friends, I was brought abruptly back to the harsh reality. Only 6 months ago, the battalion had a well-oiled command structure. The commander was Captain Dr. Zimmermann, the adjutant was Lieutenant Schuler. The company Führer of the 5th Company was Lieutenant Riedel, the 6th Company was Lieutenant Marder, the 7th Company was myself, Lieutenant Holl, and the 8th Company was Lieutenant Weingartner. To this I should have added the battalion doctor, Dr. Szczepanski, and the chief of logistics, Obersalmister Knopp. We had known each other since the day of the division's formation in September 1939, having met each other at a troop exercise in Königsbrücke, northeast of Dresden. After only 3 years, only a few of us remained. "Come, you can lie down here, and tomorrow morning I'll take you straight to your company." "Thank you, Jochen. I'm tired as a dog." I laid down on a wool blanket, made myself a pillow from my camping bag, and tried to sleep. In my half-sleep, I heard our commander talking on the field telephone to the regimental headquarters. Outside, through the basement ceilings, came the muffled sounds of light bombs bursting and the noise of the engines of the sewing machines, as we called the Russian Ilyushin airplanes. All this told me that I was home again in my unit, Sector 24. I woke up to someone shaking my shoulder. "Mr. Lieutenant, Mr. Major wants to talk to you." I jumped to my feet. I quickly smoothed my uniform, and soon I was standing in front of my commander. "Lut Holl is here on your orders." "Thank you, Holle. Did you get a good night's sleep?" "Jawohl, Mr. Major, as well as circumstances permit." "Well then, let's get started. Look at the situation on the map. We are ordered to fight our way to the Volga from here, on both sides of the Tsaritsa. This little river, which flows here and after about 1,000 meters in a straight line, flows into the Volga. The enemy has equipped positions in the ruins of buildings and is giving us stubborn resistance. From here we will advance in a straight line. It was here yesterday that our sappers advanced to the enemy's southern flank and tried to smoke him out of there with flamethrowers before dark. However, they had to withdraw with heavy losses. Your neighbour on the right, on the other side of the Tsaritsa, will be the 3rd Battalion under Hauptmann Rittner. Your neighbour on the left is the 14th Panzer Division. The boundary line with the neighbour on the left runs along this street, which goes almost directly to the Volga. The remnants of the 5th and 6th Companies will be subordinate to you, and the 8th Company will remain under the command of Oberfeldwebel Jacobs for the time being. The day before yesterday we received reinforcements from the Feldersatz Battalion, mostly 18- and 19-year-old Sudeten Germans with no combat experience. I expect the officers are about to arrive. I don't yet have the exact time of the start of the attack from regimental headquarters, but I think it will be 6 o'clock in the morning. Do you have any questions? No, Herr Mayer. I'm glad that Hauptmann Rittner will be there, and at least I won't have to worry about my right flank. Yes, Holly. Here at the front, Rittner has a rock-solid reputation. It was for the success he and his battalion achieved that he was awarded the Knight's Cross. I am very happy for him. Now, having familiarized myself with the map, I have a better idea of the location of Stalingrad. It is similar to my hometown of Duisburg. Both lie on the banks of the river, both have a length from north to south of about 30 kilometres, and from west to east, about 8 to 10 kilometres. Only my hometown is located on the east bank of the Rhine, while Stalingrad is located on the west bank of the Volga. In fact, you'll do better now. Your messenger Marek will take you to the company command post. Take care of yourself, and good luck. I saluted the commander and left the room. Oberrefreutor Marek was already waiting for me in the hallway. I had known him since I had arrived in my company. He was from Upper Silesia, where he had a small farm. This man was the epitome of reliability. His face was glowing, and I realized that this joy at my return was genuine. I was glad to see again the face of a reliable soldier that I had known for a long time. So, Marek, you old rascal, how are you? I gave him my hand. Well, Mr. Lieutenant, I'm damn lucky. Have you been on vacation before? No, Mr. Lieutenant, the last time was after France. Then you damn well better get it. Yes, of course, but I'm single and I've already had to sacrifice it several times for comrades who have families. Well, when all this fuss is over, it'll be your turn. I'll see to it. While we were talking like this, Marek led me outside through the maze of passageways under the former women's prison. Across the street from us, parallel to it, almost strictly north-south, was a railroad track. I glanced at my watch. It was almost 4 o'clock in the morning. We changed direction, turning east, and went to where the Volga was to be located. From time to time, the sounds of machine gun and rifle fire reached us. It was heard somewhere to our left, from the direction of the city centre. Against the background of the slowly lightening horizon, the ruins of stone buildings stood out clearly, silent and gloomy. The empty spaces in front of them, piles of charred beams, were still smouldering and smoking. After about 100 metres, Marek led me into the basement of a half-burned brick house. Finally, I arrived at my company command post. It was located underground, in the basement, in front of which stood the remains of a brick wall. From here we could observe the enemy. When I went inside, it was possible to distinguish what was close by only by the faint light of the Hindenburg lamp. There before me, stretched out at attention, a human figure who began to report. 7th Company Command Post. Feldfebel Grossmann and 3 messengers are pleased to welcome you back to the company, Mr. Lieutenant. I looked into the eyes of my faithful friends in some excitement. Unshaven faces, black with soot, showing the strain of the past weeks. They were all genuinely happy to see me again. Words were unnecessary. Firm handshakes said it all. Thank you, Grossmann. At ease. Good morning, comrades. Good morning, Mr. Lieutenant. Marek, you stay here for now. Grossmann, escort me out. We're ordered to attack in about 2 hours. Marek, bring here the commanders of the 5th, 6th and 9th companies and inform them that by order of the battalion commander they are under my command. Do you know where their CPs are? Jawohl, Mr. Lieutenant. Here in the city, everyone sits on each other's heads. After Marek got out, Feldfebel Grossmann showed me our positions on a trophy map of Stalingrad. Looking up, I glanced at the smiling face of the non-commissioned officer. He was wearing the Iron Cross First Class. My eyes widened with surprise. Good God, Pavelek Zusko, am I dreaming? You're a non-commissioned officer, and you're wearing the Iron Cross First Class. How did you achieve this? Feldfebel Grossmann answered for his subordinate. 3 days earlier, Pavelek had taken out a battery of Ratsch booms with a light mortar, for which he had been promoted to non-commissioned officer and awarded the Iron Cross First Class. Fantastic! Zushko, you have to tell me about it. Well, Mr. Lieutenant, We were making our way into the southern part of Stalingrad when I noticed a whole battery, 4 guns, being pushed into position by hand just at the crossroads. Then I set up a light mortar behind the wall and soon, after the second shot, achieved an almost direct hit, and then all I did was to drive shell after shell at them. 20-30 rounds is like pouring rain, just like you did at Kanev, on the Dnieper River, when the Evens came at us 40 metres across the wheat field, and you brought them deliverance from the torment from above with a light mortar. I haven't forgotten anything. In my mind, I went back to Oberlausitz and later to France, when I had trained those rough but honest boys from Upper Silesia in infantry weapons. Sometimes they must have cursed me to themselves, but still they knew that I treated myself no less strictly. Above all, I had to demonstrate to the soldiers what they could count on, and here I had to pass on to them what I myself had been taught by my Reichswehr instructors. My teachers were mostly from Silesia and East Prussia themselves. And then what happened? Well, the whole battalion made a dash forward. Thanks to the powers of heaven, the Ivans barely resisted, and we managed to capture another chunk of that cursed city. I turned to Field Feeble Grossmann. He had been in my 7th company after Kanev, when a year earlier, in August 1941, the 1st Battalion had been literally torn to shreds, and its remnants distributed between the 2nd and 3rd Battalions. He was a native of Mecklenburg. He was a tall, slender, blue-eyed blonde, a typical descendant of the Vikings. It was immediately obvious that this man could be relied upon. The Field Flebel's origins were revealed by his accent, a native of northern Germany. The accent was characterized by a clearly audible hard S, while the Upper Silesian accent was characterized by a rolling R sound. So, Grossmann, what happened after I was wounded in Nirkovo on April 19th? But only, please, in the most general terms. You know we were ordered to storm the bastion on July 8th. The task was given to your predecessor, Oberleutnant Menert. He was wounded shortly before we reached the southern edge of Stalingrad. That was 10 days ago. After that, I took command of the company. The attack on the bastion at Nirkovo cost us dearly. Lieutenant Riedel was also killed there. The whole southern section of the front was in disarray. For us, this basically meant that we had to go and march forward. We could barely keep up with the motorized units. We were moving in a southeastern direction through Voroshilovgrad and Kalash toward the Kalmyk steppes. But after that, the division was turned eastward, and we began to advance towards Stalingrad from the south. Lilt Janke, who replaced Lit Riedel in the 5th Company, lost his right arm shortly after we reached the outskirts of the city. Lit Pönig hit a mine near Voroshilovgrad and was killed. There are only a few men left in the company. Now, after your arrival, the company consists of 1 officer, 2 field officers, 2 non-commissioned officers, and 39 soldiers, a total of 44 men. Feldfebel Kapal is in the vicinity. He commands a platoon. The 3 squads are commanded by non-commissioned officer Rotter, Oberefreier Dittner, and Oberefreier Kowalski. Non-commissioned officer Pavelek is the company commander and at the same time a jack of all trades. The sliding door opened from the outside. A soldier came inside and stood at attention. Oberfeldfebel Jacobs reporting as ordered. Thank you, my friend. It's good to see you again. We shook hands. Only if you have been in a brutal battle, relying entirely on Oberfeldfebel Jacobs and his platoon of heavy mortars. Can you understand the brief wave of heartfelt emotion we felt when we met? What gave me extra confidence was the fact that these battle-tested warriors would be participating in the upcoming attack, Grossmann and Jacobs. They resembled brothers. Jacobs, too, was from the north of Germany. Now I was waiting for the appearance of my friend Uli Weingartner, who had taken command of the 5th Company after Lit Janke had been wounded. Weingartner came to us from the 14th Anti-Tank Company. While still a young volunteer, he caught the end of the First World War. He was the oldest of our comrades. He had time for everything. He was an absolutely reliable man and universally liked. I, too, had managed to become attached to this man, and the age difference that existed between us meant nothing. Uli appeared only a few minutes later. "Good morning, gentlemen." His face lit up with a smile as he greeted me. "My goodness, Bert, it's wonderful to meet you again. I had already heard of your arrival and was glad to have another old man back in the battalion." We shook hands firmly. The presence of our fallen comrades and those who were still alive when I was wounded in April, but were no longer with us, was invisible in the room. There was something sad in that handshake, something that weighed heavily on us. "So, dear Uli, later you will tell me what has happened to you during the past months. Before Lieutenant Fuchs arrives, please report to me how the front looks here now." "Yes, my friend, the last few days have been bloody hard and have cost us dearly. The Russians were taken by surprise by the attack of our tank and motorized troops, who created what was called a blocking position north of the city to repel attacks from the north, waiting for the units that would come next to enter and seize the city. This was also the case when we made our way to the southern part of Stalingrad from the Kalmyk steppes. Little managed to see the city before he was wounded, and I took over the company. The heaviest fighting was at the grain elevator. The rest of the brick and concrete buildings were also defended by Ivan's armed to the teeth. This is a completely new kind of combat for us. You have to wait for fire from any hole or breach in the wall. These guys even appear from underground. They know the local sewer system. Suddenly they appear from the manholes, shoot at you from behind, kill or wound a couple of soldiers, and then disappear like ghosts. It's impossible to see anything. Everything happens completely out of the blue. We are now more cautious and shoot at any movement. We had to pay too high a price in blood. I looked at my watch. It read EZU 445. Soon we were to be told what time the attack was scheduled for. At that time, Lieutenant Fuchs, who commanded the 6th Company, or to be more accurate, its remnants, because in terms of combat value, we were all just glorious platoon leaders, came and reported his arrival. We introduced ourselves to each other, and I allowed the lieutenant to report on the current positions of the company, indicating them on the map, a trophy map of the city of Stalingrad. Accordingly, I explained my location on the left flank of the battalion. My neighbour to my left was the right flank unit of the 71st Infantry Division, namely its reconnaissance battalion. To my right were the positions of the 6th Company, whose neighbour to my right was, in turn, a unit of our 3rd Battalion. The boundary line ran along the Tsaritsa River. The 5th Company was in reserve and was located behind the positions of the 6th Company, and the 8th Company, with its 4 heavy mortars and 4 heavy machine guns, was left in the rear of both companies of the 1st Echelon. Gentlemen, we have been ordered to occupy the high-rise building shown here on the map. You see it is in the shape of a U or horseshoe, and both sides of the horseshoe are turned toward us. You know better than I do how fierce the resistance of the enemy is, as you have been trying to attack it since yesterday without success. We shall soon learn from the messenger when the attack is to begin, whether we shall receive support from our artillery or from the 13th Company with its howitzers. Since you are all near your units, I suggest you wait here for the messenger to arrive. We tried to see through the hole in the wall to the battlefield that lay before us. It was already starting to get light. Smoke from the smouldering wood in the destroyed apartment buildings lay in a thick veil over the entire neighbourhood. The wind was once again fanning the fire here and there. The stovepipes of wooden houses burned to the ground were aiming at the sky. Ahead of us, about 300 metres away, we could distinguish the smoky silhouette of a high-rise building. It was not yet illuminated enough to make out details. Between it and us were only ruins of brick walls, bare stovepipes, and the smouldering remains of burned wooden logs. We had to decide how we could cross this vast area and reach the apartment building. The central part of the building had been thoroughly destroyed by direct hits from bombs, but there was still machine gun fire on the sides of the house, which had not ceased since yesterday, which had been so difficult for our soldiers who had been unable to advance. Jacobs, You must suppress any enemy fire on the sides of the building with aimed fire from all heavy machine guns. This is especially important where the Ivans occupy the upper floors and can fire on our men from above. You must flatten the targets below with heavy mortar fire. If possible, we'll maintain communication and visual contact. Herr Fuchs, you will take over the targets in front of our southern flank, that is to the right of here. My company will take the northern left wing. That way we'll attack in a narrow area and we can maintain visual contact and even communicate with voice commands in some places. Do either of you have any questions? No. Then we'll wait for the signal to attack. When it was slowly starting to get light, my old friend Marek showed up. Mr. Lieutenant, by order of the battalion commander, the attack must begin at exactly 7 a.m. At the first stage, the battalion cannot rely on support by heavy artillery fire, as it is supporting units in other areas. Thank you, Marek. Report to Mr. Major that we are attacking as ordered. At the same time, inform him that we ask for artillery support as soon as possible. Jawohl, Mr. Lieutenant. Marek saluted, turned around and climbed out. Now, gentlemen, you have all heard that we will have no artillery support. I hope luck will be with us, and I wish it for all of you. Let's check the time. My watch reads 05.25. Mr. Fuchs, both our companies will advance at 6 o'clock. We'll move as quietly as we can to get through the area in front of us without disturbing the enemy. How we proceed will be determined by the situation. Uli, you and your company will stay here. Keep in touch with me and wait for further instructions. Handshakes with my comrades, and here I was alone again with my Kompanietruppe and field feeble Grossmann. Grossmann, you will remain on the left flank of the company as we move along the street. This map shows that the street runs to the left of the target of our attack. One more thing, tell the soldiers to be careful. Because there are so few of us left now, any losses will be doubly painful for us. Yes, Herr Lieutenant. We were lucky to get 20 men from the reserve battalion 3 days ago. They're 18 and 19-year-old Sudeten Germans. No combat experience, just basic training. They've never even thrown a real hand grenade. I had already distributed them among the rest of the company and put them in the hands of our old tried-and-true guys. That means that almost every other one of us is a rookie with no combat experience. Well, let's be happy about that then. They'll have him soon, Mr. Lieutenant. All in all, they make a good impression. I believe you, Grossmann, but without combat experience and getting into such a complex environment, it's going to be a little difficult for these guys. We need to be extra careful with them so they don't get caught in the meat grinder. All right, it's almost time to move out. But like I said, you stay on the left side of the street and go so that I know where you are and can always contact you. Take care. Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant. It was now only 15 minutes before my comrades would move forward. With me remained non-commissioned officer Pavelek, Oberleutnant Nemetz, and Oberleutnant Willmann. I had trained these men myself after the end of the French campaign, when the division was stationed at Oberlausitz near Zittau for 6 months. There was not a type of light infantry weapon they had not mastered, and there was never a case of one of them failing in the task of messenger. A year at the front had brought us together, and each of us knew how much we depended on each other. Zushko? Mr. Lieutenant? Do you still carry your special weapon? Jawohl, Herr Lieutenant, it's in the wagon, and we'll have to wait for it to get here. Good. Think about it when Hauptfeldfeldführer Michel comes up tonight with the field kitchen. By the way, how is he now? He's fine, Mr. Lieutenant. You can always count on him as before. Where others can't find their companies, Michial is sure to get there. I would have felt more at ease if I had my arsenal with me. The special weapons included explosive charges derived from hand grenades, a Russian automatic rifle, a Russian anti-tank gun, and their ammunition. After the first battles in Russia, we realized that Russian automatic rifles and anti-tank guns were more reliable than ours. Ours were good, but they were capricious when dirty. For a long time I had been carrying ammunition that could be used with trophy weapons, just in case. And a few times in the past I had to use it, and it was useful. 2 minutes before the appointed time for the attack, I looked up into the sky. There wasn't a cloud in the entire expanse of the sky, except for the smoke of the fires around us. To the east, the horizon was growing brighter. With each passing minute, the silhouettes of the houses in front of us, or rather the ruins of the houses, became more and more distinct. The object of our attack also stood out clearly against the background of the surrounding buildings. To our right and left we could hear machine gun bursts or rifle fire from time to time. We heard the volleys of several enemy guns from the eastern bank of the Volga. These shells burst at some distance from us. The day promised to be hot. My watch showed that our soldiers should have already begun to move. The enemy must not have detected anything yet, for not a shot had been fired in our direction. It would be good to approach the high-rise building undetected. My attention was now fully focused on what was happening up ahead. Non-commissioned officer Pavelek and the 2 messengers sat silent. They too were completely focused on what was happening in front of us. Suddenly a Russian machine gun rattled on our section. Immediately after the machine gun bursts, we heard rifle shots. A battle was breaking out in this section. At the same moment, the heavy machine guns of the 8th Company opened fire. Bullets ricocheted off the terrain with a whirring sound. Suddenly, it was bright day. Through my binoculars, I could fully distinguish the target assigned to us. It was a 6-story red brick building about 80 meters wide. On either side of the main building were annexes about 20 meters wide. The structure of the building resembled an inverted rectangular Latin letter U. The central part was bombed by our airplanes and artillery. Through the window openings inside, you could see huge piles of construction debris. In this part of the building, I was unable to detect the enemy. However, the defenders were firing from both side annexes. The Ivans found themselves on the upper floors. From here, they could control the entire neighborhood. Our attack was stopped about 150 meters from the target. The squads took cover and fired independently. At my CP, messengers from Lieutenant Fuchs and Feldfebel Grossmann appeared and reported to me what I already knew myself. I gave the order for everyone to lie down and await further instructions. Willman. Mr. Lieutenant. Report to battalion. The attack began at 6 a.m. We advanced about 150 meters and were forced to lie down under fire from the defenders. The enemy controls the battlefield and is firing machine gun fire from above from the dominant positions. We can't continue without support from heavy artillery fire. Support is urgently required. Did you get that? Yes, sir, Mr. Lieutenant. I signalled him to let go, and Willman climbed out. The sun was now fully visible in the sky. It was getting warmer. I sent Oberleutnant Nemetz to fetch Lieutenant Weingartner and Oberfeldfebel Jacobs. Soon both of them were already at my place. It was already 9 o'clock in the morning. One always forgets the time when your whole being is in a state of anxiety and preoccupation, when you are required to be in a state of mind that allows you to find the right solution with lightning speed. I discussed the situation with both comrades. Thank God, according to the reports we have received, we have not suffered any casualties so far. Uli, do you understand? That's right, Bert. Jacobs, in the current situation, the range of your heavy mortars will not be sufficient to reach the Ivans in the side annexes of the building, but we can try to destroy their nests with heavy machine gun fire. Mr. Lieutenant, we've already managed to pinpoint the exact location of the Russian machine gun nests, but these guys are very fast. They change positions, fire in bursts at irregular time intervals, fire from here and there, then stop firing altogether. My men have to be very creative. Yes, I noticed it too and have already reported it to the battalion. Moreover, I have requested urgent heavy artillery fire support. With our relatively low combat value, we should avoid any useless losses. I assess the situation in such a way that we will not be able to push forward until all these pockets of resistance have been cleared. In addition, our neighbour to our left is not showing any appreciable activity. His section is also under machine gun and rifle fire from the left wing of that building. Judging from the sounds of battle, They are now somewhere to our left and behind us. Jacobs, return to your company and continue to suppress the enemy with heavy machine gun fire. Uli, you stay here with non-commissioned officer Pavelek and wait for me. Nemetz, you'll come with me. I want to visit our neighbours on the left and find out what the situation is now. All right, Bert. Have a safe return. I went to the rear, using all the cover I could find on the ground. I hopped and skipped from one ruin to another. I tried not to be seen, or at least to be seen only briefly by the enemy. After about 100 metres of fast running, we ran across the street that served as the dividing line between us and the neighbours to our left. I had to ask several times where the command post of the neighbouring unit was before I finally reached it. All this time the sun was mercilessly warming my skin so that I was drenched in sweat. I introduced myself to the commander of the 171st Reconnaissance Battalion and told him that I was his neighbour on the right. Lieutenant Holl, acting commander of the 7th Company, 276th Infantry Regiment. Von Winter. Herr Oberstlieutenant, Lieutenant Colonel, I would like to know how far forward you have managed to advance. We were supposed to capture a high-rise building, the top of which you can see from here. Our attack has stalled at 150 metres, and we are now periodically coming under machine gun and rifle fire from the upper floors of the main building and from both side annexes. We can neither continue the attack nor pull back without risking heavy casualties. I have asked my battalion for support by heavy gunfire, but have had no news from there as yet. Your men are lying down behind us. I'd like to know why your units are stuck behind us. A polished, pleasant-looking lieutenant colonel, whose adjutant looked equally well-groomed, asked me somewhat arrogantly, "Yes, my good friend, we have not been able to advance as far as we had planned, and we are also waiting for heavy artillery support. Fortunately, by noon we'll have 2 assault guns at our disposal to use here. Until they arrive, I can hardly continue the offensive, as my soldiers on the right flank have to lie with their heads in the mud, because of that damned machine gun fire on your attacking line. When does Herr Oberstlieutenant expect the assault guns to arrive? In an hour or 2. That is between 2 and 3 hours. That's right, my friend. At this time you may arrive here again. If things don't change before then, I'll definitely be back." I saluted and headed back with my messenger. Instinctively we tried to use any cover as soon as we heard the sound of a heavy shell bursting, or the approaching sound of an artillery volley told us that the bursting would occur somewhere nearby. When I looked at myself, all covered with mud and sweat, I realized why those gentlemen, representatives of other branches of the army, behaved so pompously to me. They did not insult us directly, and we did not take offence at them. After all, we were infantry, hoppers over any roadless terrain, as some derisively called us. Infantry cover a distance of thousands of kilometres on their feet over this almost endless land. They are obliged to bury themselves in this ground to keep it behind them. The infantry cannot quickly dismount and rush by transport to the next position as the tactical situation demands. All marches in our units where loads are carried by horses are made on foot. In any case, this attitude toward us did not hurt me. I returned to my CP and briefed my friend Uli Weingartner on the situation of our neighbours on the left. Oberleutnant Willmann, returning from the battalion CP, reported that Major Dr. Zimmermann had requested heavy artillery fire on our section. Hauptmann Rittner's 3rd Battalion, deployed on the other side of the Saritsa River, also came under fire from the south wing of the building and also failed to advance. Non-commissioned officer Pavelek handed me a piece of bread and a mug of cold coffee. I quickly swallowed both. I couldn't get the assault guns out of my head. Only with the support of their fire could we have attacked and captured the high-rise building. But we didn't have them. Would this Oberstlieutenant Winter put these guns at our disposal? Regardless, I was going to see him again in an hour. Oberfeldwebel Jacobs appeared and wanted to know what was happening on our left flank. Lieutenant Fuchs and Feldwebel Grossmann with his soldiers, so and stuck right in front of us, and only the impact of the assault guns or the onset of darkness could save our comrades in the front line from the difficult position in which they found themselves. The sun was scorching mercilessly over the city, the air was shivering with heat, and the sweet odour of decay permeated everywhere. Everything in our sector seemed dead. From here, in the rear, I could see a few of my soldiers with the naked eye. They were trying to find a suitable hiding place. Only sparse movements showed that they were still alive. I could clearly feel the tension hanging all around. Just then, our battalion commander's adjutant, Lieutenant Schuler, appeared at my CP with a messenger, Oberleutnant Marek. "So, Bert, what do you think the situation on the front lines looks like?" The commander ordered me to personally assess it on the ground. "You know, Jochen, nothing has changed since my last report to the battalion. Our soldiers are trapped in a mousetrap. Luckily, at this point I only have one lightly wounded man. Without the support of heavy weapons, we can't advance anywhere tonight, at least not before dark. Whether we can advance at night, we'll see." I must tell you from the commander that, in his opinion, it is unlikely that today we can count on artillery support. The division has concentrated the fire of all available guns on the right flank. Even our 13th Company must participate in this task. They decided to break through there to the Volga at any cost and defeat the enemy. Even from here you can hear the sound of the battle going on there now. Of course, I heard the loudest sounds of battle coming from the right. It seemed that the two opposing sides had brought all their guns from everywhere. In addition, the fighting had resumed a little farther to our left, near the centre of the city. However, the rumbling of artillery could be heard from there more deafening than the concert that was being given in the vicinity of our sector. The concert included a band consisting of a couple of damn enemy machine guns and a few rifles. They weren't firing particularly loud, so when they hit a target, that hit could be heard. In such a situation, the soldiers on the front line could see and hear the enemy that lay opposite. Looking at the battlefield through binoculars, Lieutenant Schuler turned and told me confidentially, "Bert, I'm worried about the commander. He's all yellow and it's pathetic to look at him. I think he's got bile all over him. Damn it, that's all I need right now, to lose Papa Zimmerman. I hope he's not doing too bad. I'll meet you at the CP tonight when I can. I have to report to the Major that I visited our neighbours on the left, the 171st Reconnaissance Battalion. There's 2 assault guns coming up there. I'll see if they can help us too. Bye, Jochen. Take care of yourself." At my command, Oberleutnant Nemetz jumped up and approached me. Now, the way to our neighbours on the left was no longer something unknown. As we made our way along the wide asphalt street that had been assigned to us as our boundary line, I heard the deafening rumble of 2 engines and the clanking of tracks on the hard surface. Rejoicing, we both hastened to these sounds, which caressed our ears like music. It was our comrades. 2 assault guns, carefully covering each other, were rolling rumbling toward us. I started waving my arms, attracting the attention of the crews. The first vehicle, a colossus of steel, stopped. A head emerged from the commander's hatch. I saw a strand of blonde hair and 2 piercing eyes staring questioningly in my direction. Lieutenant Holle, acting commander of the 7th Company, 276th Infantry Regiment. Lieutenant Hempel. "Herr Hempel, you must help us. Could you come down here for a moment?" The blonde lieutenant was beside me in 2 jumps. He was about half a head taller than me. "Where's the shooting?" "It's been 8 hours since we've been pinned down here. We can't break through. From that high-rise building, the top of which you can see from here through the opening, the Russians have their machine guns all around. You were called in to relieve the 171st Reconnaissance Battalion?" "Yes, that's right. I have to report to Oberst Lieutenant Winter, and I'm just looking for his CP. Mr. Hempel, you won't have to do that if you follow me with both of your guns and help us take that damned high-rise building and destroy the enemy there. When this nightmare is over, you can of course then proceed to the 171st Reconnaissance Battalion, but I assure you that nothing more will be required of you today." Lieutenant Hempel seemed to be convinced by what I said. All right, Mr. Hull, we'll help you. What do you suggest? If you follow me to the next street intersection, we will then have to turn left on this paved street. Then about 400 metres ahead on the right side of the street will be a high-rise building. I and 3 of my soldiers will move behind your gun. 4 more soldiers will follow the second vehicle. Press the enemy on the left wing with the fire of your gun and shoot at everything you can find there, and let the second gun do the same on the right wing. Everything will happen so rapidly that the enemy will not realise who is firing at him. If the unexpected happens, we will cover you from the rear. Jawohl, we're clear here. When you move out, I'll go straight to the next intersection. In the meantime, I'll give instructions to the crew of the second car. Nemitz, you heard our plan? Return to our CP immediately. Pavelek, Willman, and you will go after the first gun. I'll go with you too. Oberfeldfebel Jacobs and 3 men from his unit will go after the second machine. Tell Oberfeldfebel Jacobs that we will storm the left wing of the building and he will take the right wing. Do you understand? When he was on his way out, I heard him. Jawohl, Herr Lieutenant. Mr. Hempel, it will take 15 to 20 minutes for the messenger to reach my soldiers and for them to sneak into the street to meet you. I'll try to get as close to the intersection as possible and do it without being seen by those in the high-rise building. Move slowly behind me and stop on my signal. When I raise my clenched fist several times, it will mean a command to move forward without stopping, straight to the target. Understood, Mr. Hull. Good luck. I made my way cautiously forward, taking advantage of every fold of terrain for cover. If possible, the Ivans shouldn't notice anything. The 2 assault guns rolled slowly behind me. As I approached the intersection, I gave the prearranged signal to stop. Looking through my binoculars, I saw non-commissioned officer Pavelek and Oberleutnant Willman slowly and cautiously sneaking down the street, taking cover. Now that I had passed them behind the first assault gun, it would be easy for them to keep in touch with me. I also saw Oberfeldfebel Jacobs, who was already in place with 3 soldiers. He was brought by messenger Nemitz. They had joined Pavelek and were waiting for us to appear. I looked around again at this wide and straight-paved street. On the right side stood several wooden poles with electrical wires hanging powerlessly from them. Some of the wires had been torn down and were lying on the asphalt of the street. Some of the wires were still connected to the poles. We had to be careful that they didn't interfere with our progress. I made a fist with my right hand and jabbed it several times in front of me. The 2 assault guns slowly rolled forward. Their commanders had already closed their hatches. When Lieutenant Hempel's gun rolled into the middle of the intersection, it turned to the south, and I crouched down and ran after it. I trotted after the car, so as to be able to cover myself from the fire of the Russians and to signal to my soldiers when we equalled them. Suddenly, the high-pitched sound of gunfire made me fall to my knees. It was Lieutenant Hempel who had discerned the target and fired the first shot. A second soon followed. It was the second assault gun that opened fire on its target, the right wing of the high-rise. Overcoming the stun after the first shots, I gradually became accustomed to the deafening fire of both guns. Never before had I been so close to them. But they brought my comrades so much needed help. We passed Jacobs, Pavelek, and their soldiers. Fulfilling my orders, relayed through Nemitz, they joined us. There were now 4 infantrymen running behind each vehicle. I shouted, addressing Nemitz, "Nemitz, run to Lieutenant Weingartner. When we get to the building, he's to go forward on our entire section to make a coordinated strike at the same time as us. Stay with him until you reach the high-rise building." "Yes, Mr. Lieutenant. Got it." Everything was happening at lightning speed. We 2 groups ran after the cars. The surprise for the enemy was complete. He had ceased his defensive fire from the building, which all day today had given us such difficulty. We approached the building, and now we had to hold on to the connecting wire, which was spiralling out under the tracks of the machines. There were still about 30 metres to the left wing exit. The entrance to the right wing lay still farther out, about 100 metres away. Jacobs, we're going to make a general push. I'll take the left wing, you take the right. Understood? It's clear. The assault gun halted in readiness to fire its gun on both flanks of the building. Grenades to action. Is that clear? Let's go. We rushed forward as fast as we could. As we ran, I noticed that all of our soldiers had gotten up and were rushing toward the apartment building. We were already near the entrance. Nothing could be heard upstairs. A wooden staircase led to the basement. From there, from below, we could hear a noise. Pavelek, you and Wilman cover me with fire from above. I'll see what's going on up there. Preparing a grenade, I took a few leaps down the stairs. The open door to the basement gave almost no light. At first I forced myself to get used to the faint light outside the basement. There was a faint light coming through the half-open door. I kicked the door open and froze in the doorway, in readiness to throw a grenade and fire my automatic rifle. The room was filled with people. Women held children in their arms. Old men, old women, boys and girls looked at me intently. Many were crying or shooting in fright. I yelled to them as loud as I could. "Calm down!" The noise suddenly died down, all eyes full of fear looking in my direction. "Does anyone speak or understand German?" A brief whisper, and then some old man made his way through the crowd and turned to me. "I understand a little bit." "Then tell all these people they have nothing to fear. We are not at war with women, old people and children." Tooth translated the general meaning into Russian. I continued. "All soldiers hiding in this room must come forward one by one and surrender their weapons. Nothing will happen to you. The rest of you can stay in this basement and wait for further instructions." After the old man translated my words, 7 soldiers separated from the far corner. They were sent upstairs, where they were disarmed. At this time, the non-commissioned officer Pavelek also came downstairs to see me. A native of Silesia, he spoke Polish and could convey to these men what I wanted to tell them. I could feel the obvious relief these unfortunate creatures felt when they realized that we German soldiers were not behaving in the way their propaganda described. Pavelek ordered the old man to keep the room calm and orderly. When we returned to the first floor, I verified that we had captured 17 Russians. About 20 more had withdrawn to the next block of buildings. Field-Feeble Grossman and Lieutenant Fuchs immediately secured themselves on the side of the building that faced east. We were relieved to see that all our losses amounted to only 3 men wounded and no dead. It was almost 5 p.m. Both assault guns were waiting in camouflaged positions in readiness to repel an enemy attack from any direction. At this time, our neighbours on the left also went forward beside us. There were hardly any sounds of battle in our sector. I went down to our marvellous assistants. "Herr Hempel, on behalf of my soldiers, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your superbly organised support. You can see for yourself that your intervention ensured a marvellous outcome. Herr Holl, we were only doing our duty, just like you and your men. You were excellent, but what about tomorrow? With your help, it would be much easier for us to move forward." "You're absolutely right. I will report to my commander and try to see if we can support you tomorrow. If they let us, we can be here tomorrow, but not until 0900. It's all right, as long as you show up at all. Should I report to your commanding officer how much help you've been?" "That won't be necessary. Our commander knows that we are doing our duty." "Well, I hope to see you tomorrow. Have a good day." "Danke. Same to you." The engines roared, and the 2 assault guns slowly rolled back to the rear. I hoped we would see them again tomorrow. I went back to the dwelling house and approached Lieutenant Weingartner, who, with non-commissioned officer Pavelek, was interrogating the Russian prisoners. "Well, Uli, what can the prisoners tell us about themselves?" "Not so much, actually. They don't realize much. They had a force of about 40 men defending this building. They were commanded by a lieutenant. When the assault guns started firing, the lieutenant and about half of his men withdrew. Then we must be especially careful tonight. Nemitz, you already know our neighbours on the left. Take 3 men. Field-Fleben Grossman will designate which one and take the prisoners to them. We have no soldiers to send with the prisoners. Tell the Oberstleutnant that we need every one of our men here." Uli was pleased. "Fantastic, Bert. It all worked out like clockwork. I didn't think we'd be able to advance another metre today. But when you showed up here with 2 assault guns, it was almost like a drill." "Yes, Uli, but with one small difference. We have never before had the opportunity to try to act in this way and have not practiced it. I hope that Lord Hempel will be here tomorrow as well. Right behind this building is the intersection of streets, and I don't know if you have noticed. The closer we get to the Volga, the more solid buildings come our way. There are no more wooden houses here. For us, it means that now we have to be more careful. After all, the enemy can hide behind any wall, in any cellar, or on the upper floors of houses. We have to make sure that everything is in order ahead of us, and there will be no unpleasant surprises. Non-commissioned Officer Pavelek is at your disposal. I'm going with Wilman to the battalion CP to report to the Major." "Right. Be careful, Bert." As I headed back to the battalion CP with Wilman, I glanced at my watch. It was already 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I travelled part of the way along the same route where our battle had taken place today, constantly looking around, as no one could know for sure if the Ivans would come back, where my comrades had to lie for several hours. It was a depressing picture. Dead bodies that had already begun to decompose, lonely stoves and abandoned utensils lying near the places of extinguished fires. Smouldering log cabins everywhere. This degree of destruction could only have been achieved by bombing. It could not have been achieved by artillery shelling. It was still light when I reached the battalion headquarters. It was still located in the building of the former GPU women's prison. I found my commander, Major Zimmermann, in the same place where he had been the day before. I felt as if I had never left my unit, as if I had never come back here 24 hours ago. When the Major came into the room, I was frightened. He looked exactly as Lieutenant Schuler had described when he came to my CP this afternoon. My commander's face was as yellow as a lemon. He looked lethargic and was clearly suffering from a fever. I saluted the commander. "I'd like to report that with the help of 2 assault guns, we've reached the target of the attack. Mission accomplished." The Major forced himself to smile. I could see that he could hardly speak. "Danke, Holly. Let's have your report." I described how the day had gone. He listened attentively. "Schuler had already reported on the situation in your area when he returned from your CP. The messengers have been here several times as well. We've done everything we can to try and get you some support, but your requests have been consistently denied. There is a semicircle formed to the south of us that runs right into the bank of the Volga, and it had to be eliminated today. I hope that's what happened, because that would mean that heavy equipment would be put at your disposal tomorrow." "I hope so too, Mr. Major. It is still very important for us to have both assault guns with us again tomorrow. There is no more effective help if the battle is fought in an urban area at close range. Lieutenant Hempel was going to try to come to us tomorrow as well. I think it is very important that both the regiment and the division understand the importance of such support." "I'll do my best, Holle." "Thank you, Mr. Major." "Yes, Holle, all this has hit me very hard, if you've noticed. Besides the jaundice and fever, I feel quite exhausted. On doctor's orders tonight, I'll have to leave the battalion for a few days. I'll be replaced by Major Professor Dr. Weigert. You already know him from the days of the division's formation at Königsbrücke. He has been in the commanding reserve for some time now, and I hope he will bring some officers with him." "We're going to need them very much, Herr Major. May I speak to Lieutenant Schuler, Herr Major?" "Yes, please." I went into the next room, as scantily lighted as the room I had just been in. Here was the battalion headquarters. Lieutenant Schuler was compiling a daily report for regimental headquarters. One of the soldiers was trying to establish communications on a field telephone. All this activity was very much like the work of a peacetime clerical office, except that the outward appearance was quite different. I said hello to Field Flebel Ruprecht, who had been the soul of the headquarters for several years now, and to other comrades whom I had not seen the previous evening. Our friendliness was not ostentatious. We all knew what each of us had to experience. "Jochen, give me something to eat. I'm starving." My stomach was reminding me of my rights. Throughout the past day, I had chosen to ignore them. "It's a done deal, Bert. We're trying to get in touch with the regiment so the command can get use assault guns for tomorrow. But the line's down at the moment. Strippensicher, as our signalmen were irreverently called, reported to the adjutant that communication with the regiment had been established. Lieutenant Schuler picked up the phone. "This is the 2nd Battalion Command Centre. This is Oberleutnant Krell." I listened to the last sentence with surprise. Had my old friend Rudi Krell returned to the regiment? This Lurge from Breslau held the position of Divisional 02, 2nd Commissioned Officer. I was going to ask Jochen when Krell returned to the regiment. Lieutenant Schuler spoke again. "Good evening, Herr Oberleutnant. Is Mr. Oberstleutnant Müller around? Major Zimmermann would like a word with him. How are we doing? Better now, which was not the case a few hours ago. Our messenger is about to arrive with the daily report. Wait a minute. I have someone here who'd like to talk to you." Seeing me making signs to him, Schuler handed me the phone. "Greetings, dear Rudi." A brief silence on the other end, and then a cheerful voice answered, "Whoa, Bert. We got word last night that you were back. I've already spoken to Oberstleutnant Müller about you. Due to the considerable shortage of officers we've been experiencing over the past few days, we welcome any additions, especially from among our old, experienced comrades." "How long has Oberstleutnant Müller been in command of our regiment?" "About 2 weeks. Oberst, Colonel, Gross and his adjutant, Oberleutnant Kelz, are now on leave at home. Oberst Lieutenant Müller has been sent to us temporarily from the officer reserve, and I, as an officer of our regiment, have been assigned to him as adjutant." "Who else is in there with you?" "Oberleutnant Pollitt and Lieutenant Hoffmann." "I know both of them, Rudi. We're going to have to cut this short because our commanders need to talk. Take care, old man. I'll see you soon." The tube was passed to the commander. Non-commissioned officer Ersch, who had also served in the battalion since its formation, brought me coffee and a sandwich. "Danke, Ersch. I'd love to eat this." I swallowed the sandwich greedily. The hot coffee was especially good. I turned to my messenger. "Nemetz, have you had time to eat anything?" "Jawohl, Herr Lieutenant. I've already taken care of it. The Hauptfeldfebel will soon be at the front line with the Gulaschkanone, and we will all have hot food. How wonderful! Soon I would see my old man Spieß, Hauptfeldfebel Michel, the 2 cooks and the driver. I had left the company 5 months ago, and I wondered if the men I knew had survived. I asked Nemetz about it. "All your old staff is still in the stockade, Herr Lieutenant. Even your horse Mumpitz is still there. It's beautiful. Even my old 4-legged friend Mumpitz is still alive. I hope I get to ride him soon. I wonder if he'll recognize me. We became good friends, me and this little white gelding from the former Czechoslovakian army. His name was no accident. Many riders had been dropped by him more than once. But we understood each other perfectly. I had been at the CP for 2 hours. It was time for me to go back to my comrades at the front line. Lieutenant Schuler, who was with the commander, returned to the room and turned to me. "Bert, Herr Major wants to talk to you again." I entered the next room and reported my arrival. "There you are, Holle. I've spoken to the regimental commander. He will do his best to ensure that you have assault gun support for tomorrow as well. The enemy is in the sack on our right, and we have narrowed the size of the sack as much as possible, so you can be sure that tomorrow the artillery will be deployed on our section as well. Warn your soldiers of this, so that it will not come as a surprise to them." "Jawohl, Herr Major. Since the enemy probably won't fight back, they'll save something for tomorrow for us." "I think so too. Now you need to get back to your men. I'll be replaced tonight. Dear Holle, I wish you well, and may God be with you." He looked at me intently and extended his hand to me in farewell. I stood at attention, responded to the handshake, and swallowed a few times before answering, "And I wish you all the best, Herr Major, a speedy recovery and return to your unit. With a salute, I left the room. Would we ever meet again with this man whom I revered and respected? In spite of his pedantry, he cared for all of us in a fatherly way. The flow of my thoughts was soon interrupted. The newly appointed commander that evening was Major Professor Weigert, or Papa Weigert, as we called him among ourselves. He was a typical university professor. He had risen to the rank of Hauptmann during World War I, and then was a lecturer at the University of Breslau, where he read German art history. Like his predecessor, Weigert was 45 years old, but in character he was very different from Major Zimmermann. Major Zimmermann's orders were soldierly laconic. Major Weigert could also give orders, but for the most part he spoke to his subordinates as if they were his students. Both soldiers and officers appreciated and respected both as father commanders.